Hi, my name is Leah Day, and welcome to this video for the free Motion Quilting Project. Today we're going to learn an awesome technique that I call textured applique, or you could call it wild quilting, because basically we are going to take strips of fabric and wrinkle them and twist them and secure them to the surface of a quilt in a totally random freeform way, and allow that texture, the fabric, to become the texture and really the centerpiece of this quilt. The quilt that I'm working on is Express Your Love. I'm working on the black whole cloth version of this quilt, and I'm finishing up her hair. That was the one thing that we left off of this particular version of the quilt, and I am adding loads of green fabric. I'm adding many strips. I've already pre-cut them. They're about anywhere from 1 inch to 2.5 inches wide. I've ripped these strips off of yardage. You do not have to go and cut this out with a rotary cutter and be precise. I haven't measured it either, so I might have wider strips, I might have more narrow strips, and that's okay. This is a very freeform technique. This is not at all picky, and it is not at all precise or perfect. You're going to get a different effect every time, and use the rule that I've been talking about all year, and that is you can always add more fiber. So if you step back and you're unsatisfied with what you've done, add more to it. Keep adding layers, and eventually you're going to find something that you like. So as far as the tools and materials you're going to need for this, you'll need to go on ahead and cut your strips. Just cut the edge of your fabric and just rip to make your strips. That's very quick and easy. You're going to need your quilt ready to go, and I do think that this technique works really well on a quilt surface. Of course, the back is going to be kind of ugly looking, so understand that. If this is a technique that you really want the quilt to be double-sided, this is not a good technique to use for that. You could, as an alternative, use just a layer of fabric and a layer of batting, and your batting would basically be your stabilizer. And that's exactly what I did when I was doing the textured applique for the quilt Torn Tree. And here's a photo of that. So the gray area around the tree, that was actually painted, and that was what was basically put, the textured applique, the tree, was put on that background and quilted, so it was stabilized. And then I laid the entire thing on top of a stable black quilt, essentially an entire background. And so that quilt happens to be 5 or 6 layers in some places. So understand that there's a lot of different ways that you can use this technique, and there's not one way that you can get prepared. One thing I am using that I think is kind of essential for this is water-soluble thread. We're going to be getting all of these pieces on here and being really random and freeform. And I don't want to use real thread because it might potentially show in the end. And I really just want to get things on and stable to start with. I don't necessarily want that thread in there and locking everything in place. After this quilt is rinsed and of course stitched down, I'm going to do a satin stitch around the edges to get everything nice and secure. Once that's at that state, I want to be able to wash this thread out, so that way the fabric, is even more textural. It comes off the surface of the quilt. So that's the goal here. So that's why I'm using the water-soluble thread. It gives me a nice stabilization, but it'll come out later, so it's not going to be unsightly on the surface of the quilt. The one thing that you do want to watch out for is the type of fabric that you're using. So let me show you this real quick. I've got a couple samples of fabric here. This is a Studio E print, and you want to watch out for prints, and you'll know you're working with a print because it usually has a selvage of some sort. That's a white band with some writing on it. You want to be careful with this because it has a right and a wrong side, and it's very clear which is the right and wrong side. And the reason is, if we do this and we kind of twist this piece of fabric up, you might have areas like right here where you see kind of a whiter, lighter effect, and that's gonna, kind of be glaring on the surface of your quilt. You want to watch out for prints like this. Now, if you have a print like this, this is a Carol Breyer Fowler print, and it's made to look like dyed fabric, even though it is a print. It's ever so slightly lighter on the back. It's not nearly as, such a huge change from the front to the back as these others. So you could probably get away with something like this. but just watch out for that. I'm using mostly hand-dyed fabrics and batiks, which have no right or wrong side at all. So grab your fabrics, grab some water-soluble thread, and get ready to do some textured applique. And just in case you're wondering where to find some water-soluble thread, you can find it in my quilt shop at leahday.com. I am using an applique foot, an open toe applique foot, and I am using a cheaper, inexpensive Janome Janome HD1000 today, which is like a $200 machine. I really want to emphasize that you can do this on any machine. You don't have to have some fancy dancy machine to do this kind of artistic technique. The machine's really just a tool, and you need that open toe foot to be able to see what you're doing and be able to rustle the fabric around and stuff. So let's get started doing some textured applique. Alright, so I am getting started right here, and this is the edge of her body and kind of the bottom side of the quilt, but it totally doesn't matter what direction you're working in. And I'm going to just take my scrap of fabric and fold it just a bit at the end so I have a nice smooth edge, but you know, again, none of this is required. And I'm going to just drop my foot, bring the thread up, so that way I know where it's at and it's going to really lock this first stitch in place. Okay, so stitch a bit, hit your reverse, get that nice and stable. Okay, so now it's time to really get fun with this, and I'm going to basically just kind of intentionally put pleats in this about every inch or so. That's what I decided to start with. So here we go. I'm intentionally pleating this fabric up. I'm really pushing my fingers forward. I want that fabric to get secured, and I want it to be all wild and textury. Textury, nice new word. Here we go. And I'm just working slowly. I'll stop and kind of rustle the fabric up and then stitch over it. And you know, keep the fabric, keep the quilt moving. That's the nice thing about using this foot, is that, you know, it's really stable. It's a nice stable base on the quilt itself, so you don't have to worry about everything shifting around on you. Okay, so I'm just going to continue this. And this is rather slow. I mean, it's obviously I'm not going to just buzz through this. I'm going to take my time and work one strip at a time. And I'm just kind of laying this first strip out, really overlapping. You can have areas too where it's completely flat, like right here. I'm just going to flatten this out because it'll just be easier to stitch through this way. Flatten this part out. And now I'll go back to rustling. What is the right thing to do at any point in time? Well, it's completely up to you at all times. This is a 100% freeform technique, and don't worry if your stitching is ugly, it's just going to wash out later. Okay, so here's the end of my strip, and here's the end of the place that I'm working in, about right here. So I'm kind of, you know, I can cut this off, of course, but, you know, it might be more fun to just squish this all in this section and make it all fit. You know, that might be more fun. So here I'll squish more under the foot. And I'm just generally holding it. I'm wearing my gloves because it's really letting me get a good grip on the fabric and control where it's going. I don't want it slipping and sliding all around. I want that grip. Alright, and I could even, here at the tip, I can even kind of start twisting this around. That'll look kind of cool. Okay, stitch up through this. Okay, so now I'll break thread. And this is a situation where it totally doesn't matter how close you cut your thread because, again, it's water soluble, it doesn't matter. So here we go. This is our first line, and I'm going to go on ahead and clip off this little bit right there. And I can save that for something else. Might have a little need for that. And I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning. So check out all this wonderful texture we created in fabric. And I want to come all the way down back to the beginning where I kind of created this edge here. And I am kind of still trying to keep somewhat of a nice edge on this quilt because I'm planning on facing it and turning this under. It doesn't really matter, but this is what I'm going for. And I even want to kind of put a pleat or two in this so it looks nice. Nice and wrinkly, that's the goal. Okay, and I'll rotate. And you know, you could, once you get really comfortable with this technique, you can go on ahead and add your second strip kind of right on top of this. I'm just getting started today, so I think I'm just going to go on ahead and stabilize this by stitching up. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of pulling this back a little bit. I'm pulling back with this hand and kind of laying these pieces out and overlapping them and making them behave. It's wild, but they need to behave in some way. It doesn't matter if you catch every single piece. Just kind of get that quilt under control. And then out here, because I left things really kind of plain and simple, I'm going to kind of bunch this up even more and do some intentional pleats this way. That'll be kind of neat. Just let the fabric do its thing. And I'm getting some more pleats this way, so I'm going to kind of push them all downward. And this is totally subjective. You're looking at this going, I would not do that at all. That is fine. This is a totally subjective technique. It's whatever you feel like doing at the time. So just let yourself go with it. That's what's supposed to be wild quilting. Wild and fun. Okay, up here, I kind of still want to work within these lines of hair that I have marked here, but I don't have to. I don't have to be precise or picky about it. So I'm just going to kind of wrinkle that up and kind of squish it into place and stitch on down. Just like that. So you can see certain areas are more ruffly, and I haven't even secured some of this. You know, there's some places where my stitching didn't really catch, like right here. That's no big deal. The next line, you just overlap on top of it and do the exact same thing. So let me grab my next strip. And yeah, I kind of like to go, not necessarily in stripes, but I certainly like to put some of my darker fabrics on first. And you don't have to even stick with 100% cotton here. This is some beautiful silk. And I'm going to cut this kind of short. I don't want it this long. This is a beautiful silk fabric, and the one thing about silk is it's super wrinkly unless you press it, and it also has a lot more stray threads than cotton. So watch out for those two things, but it's no big deal. And I can just lay this right next to the cotton fabric. Maybe do that fold on the edge. And I'm going to just start doing the same thing. And like for this, I might want to twist it. So let's take it and just literally twist it. And twist it all the way up. Or, you know, it's already so wrinkled, I might just kind of pull that edge and secure that edge and just let it go wrinkly as soon as it's done. That sounds good. And then here I've got this little fold. I want to just kind of tuck that down. Catch it this time. If you don't catch something the first time, just, you know, place the pen there if you want to really mark it. Make sure that you catch it the second time. In this area, you know, we had this, you know, nice kind of open space. You might want to even do a twist and kind of overlap and create more texture. Just like that. Now, oh, this happened. This can happen. Your foot literally can get caught in the fabric as you create more folds. Just tug on it. You'll be fine. I got stuck a little bit, but that's okay. So I'm just stitching right on top of that, and I'm going to come on down and kind of untwist and get back to this edge. I'm just basically overlapping one on top of the other. I've got this little narrow space here, so I think I am going to go back to that twist again and just fill in that space.
So as I stitch to fill up this last little space with this green piece of silk fabric, I'm going to explain exactly how to finish this off. You're going to first secure all of your random pleated fabrics and then satin stitch around the edges using the same satin stitch method that we learned in the video on Applique.
So I hope that you've enjoyed learning textured applique. My name is Leah Day, and this has been a video for the Free Motion Quilting Project. Find hundreds of videos stitching out beautiful designs and learning fun, cool quilting techniques like this textured applique. Find all of that at freemotionproject.com. While you're online, check out leahday.com, where you'll find a quilt shop full of books and DVDs, tools, and supplies for free motion quilting on your home sewing machine. You can also find some water-soluble thread there, which is definitely necessary for the technique that we learned today. Find all of that at leahday.com and help support this project and all of these free videos which are published weekly. Until next time, let's go quilt.